Hi there, it's John from itsmorethanjustgaming.com here, and welcome to my fourth and final video on the Dragonfire game. If you've been following on from the series, you know I was loaned Dragonfire here, which is a deck building game by Catalyst Game Labs according to the logo on the side. It's a deck building game for Dungeons and Dragons that I was loaned by Hadrian's Hobbies. There will be a link in the YouTube description to the Facebook group where you can actually contact Hadrian's Hobbies. They are a hobby stockist in the northwest of England in the town of Brampton, just outside of Carlisle. So, if you've been following the videos, previously we've gone through components, card anatomies, how to play the Jumpstart adventure, how to play the real, the standard adventure. I was going to say the real adventure, the Jumpstart's real, but there's the standard adventure as well. And in this video, we're going to look at the long rest, which happens after a standard adventure has been completed. In the long rest, that's when your party is going to heal up, which happens more or less automatically, and then you start looking at XP you've gained from the adventure, magical items that you've won as a result of defeating the adventure, and features that you can stick on your character card here. So we'll be going through all of that in just a little bit more detail than we've possibly touched on before, because we have touched on features a little bit earlier on, and I mentioned magic items and XP in the last video. This is the video where I'm actually going to talk about it in more detail. Okay, so we saw the adventure card in the last video. On the reverse of the adventure card, once you completed it, it has a section for awarding XP. There, and for this one it reads, for each scene that you start, each player receives 1 XP. If the party completes the entire adventure, the players each receive a bonus of 2 XP for a total of 5 experience points total. The standard rules apply for awarding magical items. I'll talk about them more later on in this video. However, you also have optional scenarios, so you can increase the amount of XP the adventure is worth by adding in the charge rules, reveal 1 additional encounter at the start of each scene, plus 1 XP upon adventure completion, and it's a trap. All encounters that match the colour of the first revealed encounter of the game receive a plus 1 attack strength for the entire game, plus 1 XP upon adventure completion. Those are actually quite nasty for 1 XP, but on the other hand, when you're leveling up, you're leveling up. XP dictates your player level, which I will talk about probably less than the party level. The party level is more important, actually, which the party level is the average player level, and that is, the party level is the level of dungeon you should be attempting without applying a modifier. Player level, it in itself doesn't seem to do an awful lot, although the experience points you get you to various levels. So for instance, once you've done the Jumpstart adventure, you have finished level 0 and you're at level 1, and when you're at level 1 when you have 0 to 9 XP, and then when you hit 10 XP you're at level 2. The levels themselves don't seem to do anything as far as I've been able to determine so far, other than set your party level. However, the experience points can be used to buy things, and I'll talk about that now, in fact. So, if you've been watching the videos, you should recognise one of the player boards by now, and as you can see on the player board, there are 6 feature slots. See them here? Yep, 3 on each side. At the end of the Jumpstart, none of these start off unlocked when you play the Jumpstart adventure. When you complete the Jumpstart adventure, feature slot 1 is unlocked for free, and you put in a background. So for instance, your acolyte, your criminal, your entertainer. Basically, it's a free upgrade to your character that gives you a little bit of flavour about who your character was before they were an adventurer, and it gives you a bonus ability sort of thing. Basically the same as Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, where you create you get your race, you get your class, and then you add a background and you get cool stuff based on all of that. Your first feature slot is your background. The rest of the slots, feature 2, feature 3, feature 4, feature 5 and feature 6, all need to be purchased with experience points. Feature slot 2, for instance, is 5 experience points to buy. Let's have a look. Yeah. It's 5 for the second feature slot, it's 10 for the third feature slot, 15 for the fourth. Basically, it goes up to the fourth slot. Oh, something's not right there. It jumps from 25 to 40. The sixth feature slot is very expensive, basically. The fifth feature slot is 25 XP, and the sixth feature slot is actually 40. So, but bear in mind that this is to cover for an entire campaign, probably all the way up to maximum level. Not in the basic game, probably, but with expansions in the future. So let's actually have a look at how some of the features work in a bit more detail. Okay, so let's say I've decided to play the half-orc cleric, which is devotion class. I've completed the Jumpstart adventure, and I've decided to take the soldier background. Basically, my half-orc cleric has been part of a war band or an orc army at some point in their background, and so they were a soldier attached to a military unit. They're now an adventurer. Once per game during your turn, exchange 2 grey damage for martial black damage, which is quite handy, because grey damage normally can only be applied against the sort of like the grey stuff, which is... So this is actually quite useful for that. So that's the free thing I get at the end of the Jumpstart. Let's look at what I might want to go with for my features later on, once I've actually unlocked the first and second box. I'm just going to pop this out of the way. So let's say I've decided that my cleric is going to have the war domain. It has the prerequisite requires cleric class, which is fine. It costs 10 XP, and I could either cover over my soldier background and not need to buy another feature slot and just put that in for just the 10 XP cost of the war domain, or I can wait until I've got 5 XP to unlock feature slot 2 here. Feature slot 2 here, and then the 10 XP after that to get war domain. You also count as martial class. In the equipment pack, you must add 1 martial card. You may remove 1 devotion card. That's quite cool. So that would be potentially, if you're playing a war, sort of like a priest of Moradin, for instance. I'm not actually sure who an orc war domain priest would be for, but a dwarven war one would be Moradin, certainly. And then perhaps for my third slot, the third slot down here would cost 10 XP to unlock. And then it's a further 20 XP to unlock War Priest, which requires a cleric class and war domain. And when you play non-basic martial and devotion cards during your same turn, deal additional or deal 1 martial or devotion damage. That's 20 XP. That's quite a useful ability because you end up dealing extra martial and devotion black and green damage. So that's pretty cool. So that might be how I would develop my war priest, with soldier in the first slot, war domain in the second slot, and then war priest in the third slot. In total, that's going to cost, well, let's see, you're talking 5 XP for the second feature slot, 10 XP for war domain, so that's 15, another 10 to unlock the third feature slot, so that takes up to 25, and 20 XP for war priest, so that's 45 XP in total. So you're going to be running through dungeons for a while to get that, because that's quite a lot of experience points. But that's how you would do it. You could cut down 5 experience off that by covering over soldier. I'm not sure that I would actually do that. Maybe I would, but I'm not sure yet. Okay, so the next thing that you would sort out is magic items. Magic items are dished out at the end of each adventure, and that depends what the level of the adventure is. If it's a level 1 adventure, every party member gets 1 common magic item. So let's say there were 4 here. Let's deal out 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And, sorry, you can't see all of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. The common magic items tend to be used once and get rid of. So there's a healing potion there, which is handy. A poison. We have another healing potion. And a burning hand scroll. All of these have the consume word on them, which basically means they're 1 use only. You've got the healing potions, which do heal 1 damage each. You've got poison, which forces one encounter must save, and if the encounter fails its save, it deals 3 damage to it. And the Burning Hands, +1 grey damage to all non-basic arcane cards you play this turn. So that's quite handy. But like I say, it's use 1 and get rid of. So these have all been dished out to the 4 adventurers. Actually, I'm going to turn these around so that they're not on their side, because that was just stupid of me. It made it easier for me to read though, because I'm standing off to one side. So those are the... Imagine this is given to warrior, priest, mage, rogue. Well, actually, the mage probably wants this, and the rogue probably wants this. They can actually trade. The fighter and the priest, or sorry, fighter and cleric, they're probably okay with these. But then you have to take into consideration some classes have limits. And on the reverse of your class board, it says limits. So on the half-orc cleric, it can have 3 weapon magic items, 1 armor magic item, 1 shield magic item, and 4 miscellaneous magic items. So that's a total of 9. But it can only use the devotion and martial magic items. So even if it wanted to, it couldn't use Burning Hands or the poison. It can use the healing potions, so that's fine for the cleric this turn. But it basically means it can use like swords and shields and things like that from the black deck. Whereas I imagine the fighter will probably only be able to use stuff from the martial deck, maybe stuff from the deception deck, I'm not quite sure. So yeah, you get the magic items at the end of each adventure. When you do higher level adventures, you get more than just a common item. At higher levels you'll get uncommons, there are rares, and there are very rares. If you don't have enough of one level of magic item to hand out, then you go down one. So the deck only has 2 very rare items. In fact, let me just show you the 2 very rare items. If you watched one of the earlier videos, you saw the Cloak of Stars, the Robe of Stars already. Starts and remains in play. Magic Missile may affect 1 additional encounter, and you add 1 Magic Missile to your backpack. And the other very rare one is the Sword of Sharpness, martial class. It's a martial weapon, very rare. Martial check success instead deals 1 level of damage. Normally it does 1 black and 2 grey, but if you do a sort of like a martial check and succeed, you actually obliterate an entire level's worth of damage, which is worth it if the level is worth more than 3 damage. So for instance, like an Etten starting level is 5, which is quite nasty. The final thing I really want to talk about today is adventure level in more detail. I've mentioned it a couple of times. And the thing is, you get some adventure levels. So the Dungeon Crawl adventure that I've been using as an example is a level 1 adventure. However, adventures can be replayed again at higher levels. When you replay an adventure, you get more experience points, but you don't get any magic items at the end of it. So basically, using the Dungeon Crawl as an example, this one here, you just go back into the dungeon again and again to kill more monsters to get experience points, so that you can level your cleric up and get 45 XP, so they can become a war priest of the war domain, or the equivalent in the fighter, or whatever. The thing, if say for instance that the dungeon crawl's a level 1, when you put it to level 2, you get 1 additional XP per scene and 2 additional XP per completion. The cost of that is, at a level 2 adventure, it starts at Dragonfire level 1, whereas it would normally start at Dragonfire level 0. So that actually makes it a little bit harder. So you get tougher monsters out on turn 1. And you are just that little bit closer to the monsters leveling up. If you move it to, say, level 4, you get 2 extra XP for scene and 1 extra XP for completion, but your Dragonfire level is 3. There is also, when you do it at Adventure level 5, the Dragonfire level is set to 0, but you have an additional scene, which is quite difficult. So yeah, that is Adventure levels. You can redo them but it is just for experience points. You don't get to get any extra treasure as a result of that. But that's probably worthwhile when you have a couple of generic dungeon crawls, just to get your party skilled up so that they can go on to the next part of the main quest chain. It's a staple of Dungeons and Dragons is side quests to get your party skilled up so that they can actually go to the next level and get tooled up. So that's been my run through of as much as I could cram in for the game Dragonfire. These videos have been longer than I anticipated. The rules themselves are relatively complex, but the game itself isn't. Some of the complexity is added by misunderstanding on my part, and I would say a little bit of vagueness in the rules as written, but once you actually get your head around it and play the Jumpstart Adventure, this is a really fun game to play. I'm very happy to say that one of the people we were playtesting it with has decided to actually buy the game. So that's good news, and we'll get to play a campaign through. I also understand they're possibly going to be getting some of the expansion, so we'll have more than just the fighter, the wizard, the rogue, and the cleric. Personally, I'm hoping for rangers because I quite like rangers at high levels. So that's Dragonfire. A very enjoyable game. One of the assessments that came out of it is we wouldn't call it a deck building game so much as we call it a hand building game, but that doesn't detract from the fun. It feels very thematically like Dungeons and Dragons. It plays relatively quickly. It played quite slow for us when we had a group of 6, but again we were learning the game and teaching the game to new people. So I was teaching the game, and like most of the table were learning it. But that didn't matter. We were still having fun. No one felt like they were sitting there for ages doing nothing, which I sometimes feel like with, say for instance, the Marvel deck building game. If you've got a full house of players, that can actually slow down. The pacing of this is very good, and I love the fact that you can level up in it and gain magic items and new skills. So that's been Dragonfire. I've been John from itsmorethanjustgaming.com. If you enjoyed and found these videos useful, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. There is a link in each of the video descriptions to the blog article which covers this. Don't forget to go over and check out the blog for other games reviews and thoughts on gaming in general. There is a link in the description also to Hadrian's Hobbies website, or rather the Facebook group. It's quite a lively group of gamers, good lads. I encourage anyone to go along and say hello, and if you're within a reasonable travel distance, go there for your gaming needs. Thanks very much. Bye for now.